Hi, Becca. This is Becca. She's here with us,
Hey,
joining me for where I'm from, number 52. Thank you for being here. I really appreciate
of
it.
course. Thank you so much
Um,
for asking.
you're welcome. Thank you to Emily for connecting us. That was very sweet of her.
A true gem.
Yeah. So I'm reading I'm Glad My Mom Died by Jeanette McCurdy. And I mean, you're hearing a lot about it. I realized it was the number one New York Times bestseller and it sold out on Amazon. After I read it, I didn't realize how popular it was. I thought it was, I mean, I thought it was difficult and devastating, but I thought not only did it have a lot to say about eating disorders and growing up in an abusive household where you're being gaslit and gaslighting yourself, but I also thought it had interesting insights about being a child actor and a child worker,
Mm.
and how children really don't get a chance to be children when they're supporting their families. And even if they're famous, even if it's like the happiest possible scenario, it's still hard because it's too much. And so I thought
Yeah,
that
I
was
think a lot
really,
about that.
yeah. Even when I'm watching stuff, I'm sort of like, and she talks a lot about that, like, how good is it to
Mm.
be pretending to be devastated, or you've discovered your dead mom or whatever the thing is, it's just, so I thought that was really, I've read a couple things by child actors and I'm always reminded to remind my children that no.
Cannot do this. Sorry. Love you. No.
But yeah, I know you like performing, one of my kids does, and like, but you're doing it for fun. And that's great. It's a hobby, you love it. You know, it's very different from having it be your job. Um,
Yeah.
so I thought it was good. Are you reading anything, Becca, or do you not have time for that right now?
Oh no, I have to read. If I'm not reading, I will completely lose my mind and I
That's
will
how
not
I
be able
feel
to write.
too.
So,
Yeah.
I am reading a book that my friend Andy Kroll just put out a few weeks ago. It's called A Death on W Street. So it's about the conspiracy theories around the murder of Seth Rich a couple of years ago. It's so good. He is just one of my heroes. He's an amazing investigative journalist and weaves together these like really beautiful narratives and finds the humanity in conspiracy theories and in like really horrific ways of
Mhm.
seeing the world. And I just think it's a really stunning book.
Okay. I'll have to put that on my very long list of
I feel you. I
it's
feel you.
just I'm going to start a book that I've been meaning to read for, a year. I think that's next. It's just sort of, yeah, it's just what shows up and what I'm in the mood for. And but yeah, reading is I'm always fascinated by writers who don't read that much because I certainly came to it through
I
reading.
am deeply skeptical of writers who say they don't read much. I'm like, then you're not really, I don't know. I shouldn't throw shade, but
That's okay. You can feel free to throw shade. I was saying fascinating. I think there is a certain level of, um, you know,
arrogance.
I guess, or like for me, it's just like it's like I'm the opposite. Like sometimes I'll read a book and think, well, why would I write anything? Like this is so perfect. Um, but I am definitely not the person who read a book and thought I should do this too. That was definitely not,
Yeah, no, me either.
you
Me
know.
either.
So I'm sort of, I guess, fascinated is honest in that way. Like, oh, you had that experience. I do not have that experience.
But I
I
feel like as a writer, like it would be like trying to run a marathon on a completely empty stomach. Like for me, it's very much like sustenance. Like I
mm,
need prose and the perspectives of other human beings to fuel me, you know?
that's really beautiful. I agree. It helped me really feel less alone in the world when I was young. Like, oh, this
Mhm.
is, um, and there were so many less choices. Now there are so many books and so many perspectives, and there's still not enough representation, but there is more.
Mhm.
And I would just take little pieces from all the different things I would read, and I think that's part of the reason I was so voracious about it because, like, well, I got this here. I'll keep reading. Maybe I'll get something else here.
Yeah,
Um, and I'm still like that to some
me
extent.
too.
So would you like to say anything before you read your poem?
Oh,
You don't have to. It's just some people like to, so I just like to give people whatever opportunity. You can feel free to just launch into it.
yes, actually, I should say that I am not a poet
I mean, either.
and
That's the fun.
that I did not adhere strictly to the prompt.
No.
So, be gentle with me,
Oh,
kind
there's
viewers, I
no
guess.
criticism involved in this experience. I think sometimes people will watch one by a poet, like who are coming on because of whatever one they randomly choose, and then they'll come on and be like, "Oh God, I'm not gonna read that." No, that was actually a person who writes poetry regularly. Most of us are not in that space, and I like it because poetry's fun.
Yeah.
And I decided I wasn't a poet because I had one poetry teacher, who was the only poetry teacher I ever had, tell me I wasn't. And I was like, okay, you're right.
That's
You must know
lovely.
me better than I know myself.
Those are the kind of people who should be teachers for sure.
I know. But so much of, I was just reading something talking about how academia is, really broken or working exactly as it was designed, depending on your point of view, about how challenging it is to just be present and teach. But that's not really the point, you know. So, boo. Um, so if you're ready, I'm excited.
I'm as ready as I'm gonna get, so I guess I'll
Okay, go for
just
it.
go for it. Um, I am from a mixing bowl, shiny and dented, smudges of fudgy chocolate frosting streaked across warm metals. Whoa, sorry. I'm gonna start that over.
Feel free.
I am from a mixing bowl, shiny and dented, smudges of fudgy chocolate frosting streaked across worn metal by eager fingers. I am from dust motes dancing in the multicolored light. Stained glass transforms the ordinary into magic. I am from magnolia trees, loaded with dark, waxy leaves and stiff ivory petals, coaxed out of loamy midnight dirt. Some southern girls are from more delicate flowers, permitted to crumple and wilt. I am not. I am from Saturday football and Sunday supper, from Mark and Janet, David and Carolyn, Burtis and Virginia. I am from the groan of an old lazy boy and newspapers stacked in a wicker basket. I am from the girl get in here's and from you are my sunshines. From prayerless and y'all take cares. I'm from the church in the wildwood, Mr. Jimmy's deep voice directing the choir, and Sunday school where I am determined to have all the answers. I'm from highway diners and meat and threes, fried okra and burnt coffee, from a cascade of ball caps in my grandparents' front closet, from the pinky fingernail my granddaddy lost to the lawnmower. They buried it in the flower beds. From Big Mama's gold teeth tucked away in my aunt's house, from Grandma's jewelry box, which declared her a queen. I am from generations of disintegrating church cookbooks, notes scribbled in the margins, from yellowed paper and fading lead, instructing us on creating nourishment that should not only taste right, but look right too.
Thank you, Becca. You did it.
I did it. Poetry.
I loved it. I have some, overlap because my husband is from Texas and that's one side of his family, I think, came from Tennessee a long time ago. So certain things like,
Oh,
fried okra and just sort of the whole, it's funny, it's not really the words, it's the energy of the people. It's like I can feel them through it, and this sort of I just his Grammy, I just always felt really loved by her. And it made me think of her and her recipes. And because we have like one of her little index card boxes of her
yeah.
recipes. And she was not a good cook. Like she made chicken and dumplings, but and she made a couple other things, but like it was all full of love. And it was just
Yeah.
lovely. So what was your experience writing it?
It was really nice, honestly, to take a step back from
Mhm.
all the like book promotion and like news work of my day to day, and write something that was so personal. I had a a professor in college who um, taught news writing, but he always encouraged us to really read a lot of poetry because poetry is so economical when it comes to
Mhm.
words. Like it's the exact right word in the exact right place and looking for the precise rhythm. Um, and even though I was trying to apply that philosophy to my own writing, poetry as a form itself is very intimidating to me.
Agreed.
So it was kind of nice to like stretch myself in that way.
Hmm. And I think at least for me personally, and you can tell me if you agree, that the prompt gave me allowance. Like I felt like, oh, okay, this is telling me I can do this and it's okay, whatever I do. Uh,
Yeah. Although I'm very type A. I'm very like, give me instructions and I want to do it exactly the right way. And
right.
at some point, like writing this, I was just like, you know what, I just have to let it go.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
I just have to do it how it's gonna come out and that's okay.
And that's certainly how it's intended because I had George L. Lane came and spoke to me, who's obviously the woman who originally wrote this poem, and the prompts were created by someone else whose name she shared, who I'm not going to remember. But she's written tons of versions of this poem over the years, and she doesn't stick to the prompts, and she just the whole conversation was so validating because she was just all about the idea and the reality of citizen poetry, and which is a
Oh,
phrase coined by someone else's name I'm not going to come up with right at this moment, but I thought it was really empowering and gave me sort of a lens to see all of this through, because I started it just because I thought it would be cool to listen to people and their poems because I like to talk to people about their lives. But it's like there's real power in people sharing their stories, and I think also in like taking back a form that has been deemed, like you say, intimidating or not for us, or
mm-hmm.
and I think that um just having hearing her say that and hearing her say, I don't really believe in all that, like let's learn all the form and the, like just let's start writing her words and see where it takes us. um
Oh, I love that.
right.
Yeah, her original poem is just so arresting. I really, really loved it.
Yes, and it's so tied, and she is so tied to Kentucky and that place, and she was the poet laureate of Kentucky, and she's really I love, she still has her accent, and she's still like, this is who she is, and that takes real, I don't know what word you use that's not attached to male anatomy, but that it takes,
Gumption.
yeah, gumption, like to just within this world that is kind of
Yeah,
very ivory tower esque, to be like, well, this is who I am, this is
yeah,
what I'm
totally.
speaking about. um so yeah, it's a lovely conversation. And do you like, I've only read your pieces in Mother Jones, but I feel like you are also attached or speak from a place of like where you're from, that informs your writing.
Absolutely. It
Yeah.
informs it very deeply.
Yeah. And
Um,
I'd love to hear more about that if you want to talk about it.
yeah, sure. It's one of those things that like I didn't expect to be part of my identity as a reporter. I kind of, growing up in like small town South, I was just kind of like, get me the hell out of here. And
Sure.
like, I'm gonna like go be somebody and like
Yep.
kick the dirt of this town off my heels and never look back.
Hmm.
Uh, it turns out that's not what happens.
Hmm.
Um, but I did, when I moved from Tennessee to California, I realized that, a lot of people who don't live in the South and who've never lived in the South don't have a good understanding of what that looks like.
100%.
And they're operating off of a lot of, cliches and stereotypes and assumptions. But I also found people very interested and like
Mm.
willing to like listen, which was interesting to me.
That's nice to
And then of course, yeah, totally. And like going into a national newsroom like Mother Jones, it was like, oh, I am the only person here with these experiences. And are the people who read Mother Jones often don't carry those experiences. And I'm speaking very broadly there, but
Sure.
I I guess I sort of understood it as a way to bring like an added dimension to my reporting.
Yeah.
And it's been, it's been a tricky balance, like trying to figure out like what I want to talk about publicly and what I don't, and like how to protect my family and all that. But so it's been messy and chaotic and imperfect, but I also think that it's made me a better writer and a better reporter.
I would agree. I mean, the pieces I read, obviously, I felt like that was really present, and I think it is powerful. And I think a lot of writers or artists grapple with that. How do I bring myself into the work without, Roxane Gay says, without cannibalizing myself, and I think that's a
Yes.
accurate way or great way. She's Roxane Gay of expressing it. But that's something that you can grapple with even when you're not writing memoir. Like that is something everyone, I think most artists grapple with to some extent. It's just with memoir, it's the most obvious because we're writing about ourselves.
Yeah, and I think in journalism specifically, there's this myth of being
For
perfectly
sure, impartial.
objective,
Yep.
and that's I feel a need to be very honest as a journalist and as a
Yeah.
reporter about who I am, where I come from, and what my biases are, and like how my experience has colored the way that I see the world. And I think that that's actually useful, and I think it's better to be above board about that.
I agree. I think it's acknowledging the elephant in the room, to be honest. I mean,
Yeah.
I went to film school. It's the same thing with documentarians. Like, oh, we're just observing. We're just, I mean, okay. But I mean, you can't tell me Grey Gardens, they didn't have a point of view when they're, recording these women and, or any documentary. And I went to Northwestern and Medill School of Journalism there, and I was friends with many journalists. And that was definitely something that was being taught, like this objective truth.
Mhm.
And I think part of the reason we are where we are today is because people believed in it, and yet it's not a reality, that we're reading something
Yeah.
that is objectively true. And that's not a thing, really.
Yeah. I mean, I would love to live in a world where there's like
Objective truth.
more objective truth than not, but like I've never been able to live in that world. Like everything, there are shades of gray, like
Mm.
there's all kinds of complications and messiness to being human. And I mean,
Yes.
that's the whole point. If we're not acknowledging it, we're completely missing the point.
Right. And I think we're all, people are more unpacking the reality of that. Like objective truth was essentially a white male cis
Yep.
perspective, and that
Hmm.
any other perspective was seen as, somebody who can write in a letter to the paper complaining about how their reality is not being addressed, but is also kind of garbage, and so we're really starting to maybe, hopefully, unpack
God, I
that.
hope so.
Yeah, that is also why it can't be objective, because how could you possibly include all of these experiences in one piece of work? um so and that definitely was not something we were talking about when I was in those academic institutions. We as we being anyone who was not a white cishet man was trying to internalize and learn how to replicate that point of view.
Hmm. And like work twice as hard as the
Right,
white
because no one
cishet
really believes
men
that
to
you're
like
actually doing
earn.
it.
Right.
No matter how hard you're
Right.
really doing it, how good are you doing it?
Yep.
Because you're still sort of like writing about women, which is yee. Um, how much can we really say about them? So I'd love to, if you're not completely just worn out, anything you want to say about your book, I'd love to hear, because I
Oh
am
yeah.
the timing of it couldn't be more appropriate, heartbreakingly so.
Mhm.
Did you think that Roe v. Wade would be overturned at the time it was overturned? Yeah.
I mean, so I didn't when I first proposed the book.
Right.
Um,
And how long
I
was the process from you, sort of, because I know
it
books can take a
was
long time or less long.
so my experience was a little different in that an editor at Public Affairs read a cover story that I wrote in Mother Jones and reached out to me and asked if I was
Good for
interested in
you.
writing a book. Yeah, it was
Good for you.
the dream. Like I didn't have to write like the massive proposal. I got to do like an abbreviated version of it. Like I am extraordinarily lucky.
Think of how much creative like juice you saved. I feel like it's just
Yeah,
wonderful. That's why I'm
I
saying
think about it
congrats. And
all the time.
yeah.
Thank you. I'm very, very grateful that it worked out that way. Um, but we started talking about the book in fall of 2019. And
Fairly recently.
yeah, so I like wrote a like mini proposal, and I think I must have signed the book contract in, I guess it was like February 2020.
Wow.
And then of course I had like my book leave all planned out and was gonna like go report my
Yeah.
ass off and like be
Hmm.
in abortion clinics and on the road
Hmm.
with abortion funds and all kinds of stuff starting in like the second or third week of March 2020. So that did not happen,
Right.
obviously.
Hmm.
And yeah, I mean, at the time, I really thought that what was going to happen was that Roe would be kind of chipped away at. I didn't
Right.
think that it would be wholesale
Right.
overturned. So that was like the way that I structured the book.
Oh, interesting. Yeah.
Um,
I feel like
and
that's
I,
what most people thought. That's certainly what I
yeah,
thought because I just felt like, oh, well, this is what we're doing, right? Like
yeah,
we're
yeah,
chipping away at civil rights, we're chipping away at women's, like we're just so
yeah.
that
I was
they
like,
could have,
surely,
plausible
surely the
deniability.
boldness.
Right.
Yes, exactly. And
You
like,
know,
surely the like idea of, um, uh, oh my God, my head is just like
well, just the
done.
idea that they would just completely overturn it and say, like,
Yes.
actually, women's rights, I'm not really interested in your bodily autonomy. It's kind of a drag. Like, we didn't really think
Yeah.
that they would
Mm-mm,
just
no.
be so bold. I mean, because I think as women, we know that many, many people are not interested in our bodily autonomy. We
Yes.
walk around knowing that, but most people aren't that honest about it. Um,
Yeah. It's
it's real honest.
bold. It is. Yeah. Hmm.
In a way, it's like when someone who's been gaslighting you for a very long time says something that admits it, and you're kind of like, oh, oh, this is what I thought it was all along.
Yeah.
There's a piece that's very validating, and then the rest of it is just soul crushing because
Yes.
they've been out to get you the whole time. Um, and that is how it felt for me. Like,
Yeah.
oh, okay, this is exactly what I thought it was the whole time. And you
Yeah. It's like quiet part out loud. Didn't think twice about it.
that's
Just said
really
it.
well put. Yeah, quiet part out loud. Yeah. Yeah.
Um, yeah. So
So you structured your book that way, like that it would
yes.
be
And
chipped
like
away at.
a huge part of the premise of the book was that, there are large swaths of the country that have been post Roe,
Yeah.
um, for a decade, 2 decades,
Yeah.
as like the right to abortion has been
Hmm.
chipped away at the state level, right? So
Hmm.
obviously, like I'm talking about the Southeast where I live and the Midwest and parts of the West.
Yeah.
So I had the bulk of the book is the second part, which looks into what I was calling post Roe states.
Mm.
And then when the court overturned Roe, it was like, oh, that's actually a technical, like legal term now. Like our country is
Right.
post Roe. So
Right.
I have to think of a different way to like kind of frame it. Um, so that was kind of tough. And the other thing that happened was that, when the draft was leaked, they sped up my book timeline. So
Right.
I, it was supposed to come out in January for like the 50th anniversary of Roe.
Right.
Um,
That's so sad.
y'all, it's
Sorry.
October.
I'm about to cry. The 50th
So
anniversary of that.
yeah, yeah. So I
So
got a
then did
call
you
from
have
my
to go back
editor.
into the book and change the post roast stuff?
Yeah, and it also like before I had like a nice, like lovely, like 2 month revision period.
Right.
I was like,
Right.
I'm gonna print my pages out and
Right.
go like sit at a coffee shop with a red pen and like get all my prose just perfect. And then I get this phone call and it's like, you have 2 weeks
Oh,
and
Jesus.
you're gonna have to hire another fact checker to help you finish it.
Right.
And also we need you to write about like what's happening now and like like into the future, like past the ruling itself. Um, so yeah, I'm very nervous about the book coming out because it's
Right.
just really fast.
Yeah.
But I had a really, really great team and a lot of support. And So
Yeah.
that helps.
I
But
mean,
I
I'm
hope I
sure
never
they
have to do
want
that
all
again.
of this to land on its feet, so they're fully supporting you and making that happen.
Yeah.
But I understand that, like, when there's too much urgency, I think it just feels um, a little traumatizing. Like, just when there's so much
Yeah.
push on something, it's just like, I think it brings up, even if it's not a national stage, which yours is, or worldwide, like it just feels like a lot. So I
Yeah.
can
And I
only
think like
imagine what that felt like for you.
I am such a like narrative writer. Like I really care about prose and
Mhm.
sentence structure and rhythm and
I can feel all that.
detail and all of
Mhm.
that stuff.
Yeah.
So it was just like really heartbreaking to have to let go of some of that a little bit.
Yep.
Um, and I think that was while I'm also grieving the loss of
Of
my own
course.
bodily autonomy and
Yes. Yes.
living in a state that now has banned abortion outright and
Yeah.
trying to reckon with like what that means for the rest of my reproductive life
Right.
is been a lot.
Well, and I read your third person, I don't know what the technical term is that for that, but the abortion doctor in Texas, where he
Mhm.
told you you're as told by him.
Yeah, I still
Um,
too.
yes, told to.
Her.
Oh, yes, right. He told to her. Or is she a she too?
She's a she.
Okay, there you go. I was not
Dr. Marietti is female.
sorry.
No,
Um,
it's okay.
the whole time. Anyway, so she talks a lot about that in that
Mhm.
piece. And I saw a headline, haven't read it, but like how it's affecting where doctors are trained, like the post
Yeah.
Roe word world, like where doctors will be trained and how they will be trained. And um, like the repercussions are vast. And I'm guessing you were asked to sort of talk about that. And it's like, how how can you? I mean, you can to some extent, but so much of it is real time people figuring out, oh, this is now I can't do this. I mean, I have a friend who experienced a miscarriage in Texas in that space that is talking
Mhm.
about, and the healthcare she received was not everything she should have received.
Well, I'm
So I
sorry to hear
can't
that.
even imagine what it would be like now. And then how that feels, because I think so many people just kind of oversimplify it and just think, oh, well, if like I don't want an abortion, like whatever, and I'm never going to want an abortion. So like, who cares? Um, but it's so much more than that. It's about just like the essential healthcare that we receive as women and how, like, I mean, there are so many things that could potentially go wrong in a pregnancy, and that already, as a woman who has had two miscarriages and two children, um, it was very emotional having miscarriages, but I was not ever
Mhm.
concerned that I wouldn't receive the healthcare I needed to survive. I never had to think
Right.
about if I needed to prove to anyone that I wanted these children, or all the whatever you need to go through now just to receive healthcare that you just need. Um, and I can imagine that now holds a different level of anxiety for you as someone who is in the middle of this space of your fertile years.
Yeah. I mean, I also recognize that I'm like pretty privileged in the grand scheme of things.
Yeah, me too.
But so many of the people that I spoke to for the book who were generous and vulnerable with me don't have that kind of protection.
No,
And um,
can't get on a plane
that's hard.
or
That's
get in a
really
car and just go somewhere.
it's inhumane. It's
It
the loss
is.
of a basic human
Yes.
right, and it keeps me up at night.
Yeah. I because I have to create some kind of barrier for myself. Like, it's not my but you're writing about it. It's your beat, it's your life. And I am so grateful that you are, because the work you do is so important. And I
Thank you.
thank you for doing it. But it has to take some kind of toll on you. I mean, or do you have
Yeah.
built-in sort of checks that you
No.
can, yeah.
Mm-mm. I'm really, people are always like, how do you take care of yourself? And I'm like, I don't know. Sometimes I like take a spin class and then cry during the spin class. Like, that's good, I guess.
Right.
I don't know. I need to figure
Well,
out
I'm
better.
here to fully
I'm in
support
therapy.
you.
Therapy is
Okay,
good.
it's good to have a person that you can definitely just unload on, who you feel no guilt, a third party who can just say all the things to, who's not
Yeah.
your friend. because you don't want to worry about compassion, overwhelm, or whatever on their part. Like, it's fine. They can just listen. You're paying them. But I fully support you coming up with a self-care routine, because sometimes just even reading the articles, I just want to like punch things. Like, I want to just, and
Same.
eat, and
As like
even
a news consumer, absolutely.
like, and just even the most basic comments from men, sometimes I'm just like, just shut up. You don't understand.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I mean, like you say, very privileged. I'm white, I'm cis, I'm het, I got money. I I do not know what it's like to really feel like it's a matter of life and death, like so many women do. And that's where the real rage comes in, like how disposable so many women are to people in power. um, to them, that's not a compelling case, that
No,
it's a
it's
matter of
not.
life and death. And that's the part that makes me want to makes me want to punch things. It's like, because I know if I just looked a little different or had a different socioeconomic background, I would be in that club as well. And that even for some of them, I still am.
Yeah.
Um, and even though I know intellectually that they're not good people, and I don't care what they think, all of those things, it still takes a toll on you, to just walk around knowing that.
Yeah. Yeah,
Um,
it really does.
yeah. And that there's no acknowledgement really about what a huge thing childbirth is. Like, if you force someone to do it, that's wrong, obviously, but also you're asking them to do a really significant thing that could endanger their life. um
Yeah, that was the thing that really, I mean, it all bothers me,
of course.
but I have like a very like crisp recollection of oral arguments and
Mhm.
Amy Coney Barrett just like suggesting that like, and this is like a woman, right, who has given birth, but she's talking like we just sneeze out children and then can just like drop them off at the nearest fire station and like
Mhm.
go on about like, and like that's fine. And I'm just like,
Mhm.
I have never had a child, and I know that like that is not reality. Like,
No.
like, how do you, yeah, it's baffling to me
Yeah, it's,
and deeply upsetting.
yes, and it's just obviously a form of erasure. But I just feel like, wow, you're even like taking it to the next level. We at least used to kind of get like, oh, you have babies, and now it's like, it's no
Yeah,
big deal. Like, just
yeah,
like, just whatever. It's
walk it
like,
off.
yeah. What? So yeah, that was, yeah. It's amazing that there are always new levels. You think like, this is really it. Nope. So I can
Yeah,
only, yeah. So thank you for the work you do, Becca.
thanks. I
I really
appreciate it.
appreciate you. And I look forward to reading your book, No Choice, which comes out next week.
Yeah, Tuesday,
Unbelievable.
October 11th.
Yes, congratulations. That's 10 days before Taylor Swift's new album. Sorry, I have a fan in the house. So I have it on my
Yeah, Taylor
calendar.
Swift's album is gonna like overshadow my book release for sure, and I just have to accept that.
I'm hoping she reads it, Becca. She should,
That would be really nice.
you
And
know?
we're both Tennessee gals.
Right.
Like
That's what I'm saying.
we're both
Like,
here in
we got
Nashville.
a lot in common. So
Mm,
let's get her that book. Any other last thoughts before we close?
I don't think so. I
Okay.
This was a lot of fun. Thank
Oh,
you so
good.
much
I'm
for
glad.
having me on and
Thank
putting
you
up
so
with my
much.
insane schedule.
No, no, not at all. Nothing was, I didn't put up with anything. Just putting out into the world. You were very lovely. You're wonderful. I didn't put up with anything. I'm happy to talk to you, and I'm wishing you truly all the best with this book and all your future endeavors. I hope we get to someday read a book about what's next and how we took it back. That's what I
Yeah,
hope.
me too.
So
Me too.
thank you, Becca.
Thank you.